This is the Almost Timely newsletter for the week of February 19th, 2023. What's on my mind this week? The buyer's guide to expertise. This past week, a colleague on LinkedIn messaged me about an upcoming conference where they saw someone who, from my colleague's perspective, was clearly unqualified to be giving a talk about AI. And this person was slated to present at an upcoming conference about AI, on ChatGPT specifically. And my colleague's rather pointed question was whether this bothered me or not. They referenced that a lot of crypto bros have suddenly become AI experts on LinkedIn. And more generally, how could they and people like them know the difference between experts and people just hopping on the bandwagon, hopping on the trend? So today I figured let's go through a buyer's guide to expertise. How do you know when someone is the real deal or not? How do you know when someone's a real expert and who isn't? First, I think it's important to draw this distinction, as Google does in the search quality rating guidelines, that there's a difference between experience and expertise. Experience is something everyone can have. And whether or not we agree with someone else's experience, as long as they've had it and they're not outright lying, one person's experience is equal to another's. If I have dinner at a restaurant and I love it, right, and you have dinner at the same restaurant, maybe we're even having dinner together at the same time, and you hate it, is either of our experiences invalid? No, we've had different experiences, but each one is a valid point of view from an experience perspective. Now, here's where we transition from experience to expertise. Suppose I am a Michelin-starred chef and you are not. Perhaps we're at a sushi bar and I notice that the wasabi is actual fresh wasabi. You being someone who is not a trained sushi chef, you might not know the difference between real fresh wasabi and regular wasabi. As an aside, by the way, in America and most countries that are not Japan, 99.9% of wasabi is just colored horseradish. Real fresh wasabi is sweeter, it's more pungent, highly volatile. Once it's been ground, it loses its potency in about an hour, which is why the best sushi restaurants serve you a chunk of the root, a little thumb-sized piece of root, and a grater, like a shark skin grater, and you grate your own fresh wasabi right at the table. That's when you know you're eating at a really good sushi restaurant. Anyway, perhaps we're at a restaurant where pasta is being served, and I, as a chef, can tell that they used real truffle oil instead of synthetic truffle oil. Real truffle oil, amusingly, doesn't actually taste as strong as synthetic, but that's another topic. The expertise that I have as a chef might give me a different perspective on my experience, but I can also objectively say that this restaurant is better than that restaurant because of their technical proficiency. My technical expertise in this example as a chef is separate from my experience as a diner, and that's one major difference. Someone can be on stage talking about their experiences with AI, with large language models like ChatGPT, and their experiences are valid. But they may lack the technical expertise to go into great detail about it and ways to use it that align best with the underlying technical details of the model. For example, a few weeks ago on the Trust Insights live stream, we walked through the underlying algorithms that power Twitter and LinkedIn. We spent a lot of time on things like, temporal graph neural networks, and in the process disabused a few myths about how they work. Feel free to use as many hashtags as you want. It makes no difference one way or the other. By understanding the way the system works, the technical details, we can craft advice and counsel that goes beyond experience and into expertise. Experience is what happened to you. Expertise is knowing why you had those experiences, and that's the difference. Now, a second dimension of real expertise is something I learned from my martial arts teachers, especially Mark Davis and Stephen Hayes. Someone who is a legitimate expert knows the material, obviously, in great technical detail. They understand it in a deep way. But what they have that separates them from others is that they know what will go wrong before it happens. When you're learning a martial arts technique, you can copy the rote movements from just about anybody, right? You can watch the videos on YouTube and stuff to copy movements like a robot. What you can't learn without an expert teacher is all the ways that technique is going to go wrong. And a true master practitioner, a true master teacher will teach you and train you in all those ways that a technique will go wrong so that you're never surprised when something goes wrong. You just say, okay, this looks like this experience I had, and you do the thing, and you get out of the trouble that you're in. You know what will go wrong. You've been taught what will go wrong and how to deal with it by a true expert. For example, in Google Analytics 4, Google supposedly switched to an event-based model as its foundational measurement strategy, and that's more or less true. If you read the official documentation, a lot of the tutorials out there on YouTube and stuff, you'll learn about the event model and how events are the most granular measurement. And with events, you can measure everything, which is great. However, I can tell you with certainty that there are certain reports your stakeholders will ask you for that you absolutely cannot do. You cannot build them in Google Analytics 4 because there are still these things called scoping issues. You can't use, for example, event count, and the month dimension together because they're incompatible. You have to use the date dimension instead. You cannot use the date time dimension with events either, which is really annoying when you're trying to build like granular attribution models. These gotchas, these intricate technical gotchas, are things you only know from experience born of expertise. In the context of something like ChatGPT, if you understand how large language models work, which is the attention algorithm, we've talked about that in the past. The lighthouse being moving across text, for example, and you understand how embeddings and vectorization and a bunch of other arcane technical details inform these models, then when someone's ChatGPT prompt doesn't return what they want it to return, you can diagnose their prompt with efficiency, help them get back on track right away. This is where expertise and experience diverge significantly. You can have a bunch of experiences with something, but still not know why something went badly, right? You might know what to avoid, but you don't know why. You have no idea what the root cause is. Only there are certain things to do and certain things not to avoid. Someone with true expertise can tell you why you had those suboptimal outcomes. The third dimension of real expertise is your network. You don't have to know everything, and in reality, you can't know everything except maybe a very thin, tiny slice of the subject matter in a really detailed specialization, right? There's a lot of people who have backgrounds in epidemiology. There's a lot of people who have backgrounds in virology, but there are only some people that have a very thin slice of expertise about certain types of virology with certain types of viruses. And right, that's an example of a very tiny slice of a subject matter. But the network of people around you who are also professionals in your area of expertise can probably fill in the blanks. They know who to go to you for your specialization, and you know who to go to when you need their specialization. For example, I know a casual amount of information about AI and the law. My friend and colleague Ruth Carter is an actual expert in AI law. They have a law practice around it. They know the law. When we did the live stream chat together, Ruth went into detail about the individual cases and precedents and things. And I was like, just sitting there going, I didn't know any of this. They are an expert. I am not. So when you're trying to evaluate whether someone's an expert in something, ask who else knows them as an expert and what they're known for. If you see someone, as my colleague did on LinkedIn, on stage talking about AI, but their entire network knows them for, misadventures with Bitcoin or, TikTok expertise or whatever, and the chances that are they don't have a ton of acknowledged expertise in AI, right? My friend Mitch Joel says, it's not who you know that matters. It's who knows you, and presumably what you're known for. So that's the buyer's guide to expertise. Deep knowledge of why, in addition to what and how, based on technical principles and specialization. Knowing what will go wrong in advance and being known by other credible experts for your expertise. If you're unsure of someone, these are the 3 areas to start digging in to establish or discredit someone's claims. Chances are you will dig into any one of these areas and establish very quickly whether someone is an actual expert or not. So I hope that helps to give you some principles to start evaluating folks who claim expertise or positioned as experts, and understand whether that person is talking about experience or expertise. What else we got in the news this week? In case you missed it, I am flogging it like crazy. The new free LinkedIn course from Trust Insights. Go to trustinsights.ai/LinkedIn course. Totally free, no strings attached, on how to improve your LinkedIn profile and get better at networking and using LinkedIn for you as a person, as a job hunter, as a job seeker. That's not for marketing purposes, but it's for the many, many people who've been laid off lately. So take that course. This week, I also had a piece on the value of content marketing in an AI world, which I think should be helpful for folks who are trying to figure out how content marketing fits into the AI landscape. We talked about algorithmic understanding. Had a good live stream this week over on the Trust Insights live stream on search quality ratings guidelines, on interpreting them and how to use them. So lots of stuff to check out there. In jobs this week, what do we got? We have data analyst at IKEA. I presume you have to assemble your own computer. Lead experience design researcher at Hilton, manager of digital analytics at DHL, MarTech implementation manager at Foot Locker, personalization and marketing measurement at Manulife, sales representative at Advisor ConX, social commerce strategist at Blavity, and technical web analyst at Invia. I guess that is the name of that company. I guess. I'm not really sure. So check those out. In other news, we have stuff on YouTube Shorts monetization, how it compares to TikTok. Instagram channels are now rolling out, which I saw, I think it was Amanda Robinson that featured that first, talking about how they're basically trying to create a Discord-like service on Instagram. So we'll see how that goes for them. As and lots of stuff about ChatGPT and AI stuff. So no shortage of content to read on that topic. Fake name generators, MarTech marketing AI experts to follow. Thank you to the folks at MarTech for adding me to that list. The mood state effects of chocolate. So how chocolate improves your mood. Spoiler alert, it actually does in some very interesting ways. And then some fun videos on YouTube. This is also the 1-year anniversary of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. So if you have not done so already, or you feel compelled to do so again, there's links to donate to the Ukraine Humanitarian Relief Fund. The war is ongoing. The war will be ongoing probably for some time, and our assistance is still needed to help there, as well as helping with the rebuilding in Turkey and Syria. Upcoming events will be at PodCamp Philly in March, and then Martechopia also in March in London. Use code MARSpeaker20 for 20% off the ticket price to that one, and B2B Ignite Chicago in May of 2023. So lots of good events coming up. Hopefully, I'll see you at one or more of them. That is the news for this week. Thank you for your attention, for being here, whether you're on YouTube or listening to the audio or just reading the newsletter. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. I'll talk to you soon. Stay safe. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.